Now it's time to look at graphing lines. And graphing is a very important skill that you've got to be able to do, okay? Especially graphing lines. Lines are like some of the most basic graphs that we have in math, okay? So first of all, lines are straight. Don't have any curves in our lines. We don't have any corners. We're not changing direction. All lines are straight, okay? That's part of being a line. All right, we're going to look at two forms. There's actually three, but we're really mainly going to focus on one, and that's the slope-intercept form. But then we're also going to give you another one just because sometimes you generally see the second form and you need to be able to put it in slope-intercept form. All right, but slope-intercept form is called slope-intercept form because it's going to give us two things. So this is slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. M is our slope and b is your y-intercept. So it's slope-intercept form because it gives you a slope, it gives you the intercept. And your y-intercept is where it crosses your y-axis, all right? And then just quick review, you have your x-axis, you have your y-axis, all right? Slope is talking about how steep your line is, right? So if you imagine if you have a line, right? There's a line going there. Okay, that means that my slope, my steepness, is talking about how steep this line is if I was going to be walking uphill here. Okay, a couple things about slope. If you're walking uphill, you have a positive slope. Okay, you're going up. If you walk downhill, you're going to have a negative slope because you're going down. Right, and there's two other scenarios we'll talk about in just a second. Okay, but we have different ways of finding slope. So you might want to find slope if you're looking at a graph. Okay, so I'm giving you a line on a graph and you need to tell me what the slope is. So to do that, you got to remember that slope is rise over run. Okay, and what that means is that I would count how far up I go and how far over I go to get to another point on that line. Okay, so the up is your rise and then the over is your run, okay? Or you could be going down and over. It just depends. So we'll say up, down, and left, right, all right? Or I might give you 2 points and you have to find the slope. And so we can do it algebraically with a formula, okay? So if I'm talking about the rise and going up and down, that's talking about the change in the y-axis. So we say it's y2 minus y1, where these are the two y values of the 2 points that you're given. And we subtract and simplify, and then on the bottom we put the distance that we run, right, which is going left to right. So that means we're looking at the x-axis, so we do x2 minus x1, right? So I'm either going to give you a graph and you find the slope, or I'm going to give you 2 points and you find the slope using our formula. So for these two examples, the first one, right, I gave you 2 points. So I'm going to consider this to be my x1, y1, because there's my first x value, my first y value. And then over here we have x2, y2. Okay, my first point, my second point. So all I'm going to do is plug in to my formula. So we can say m equals, and now we got to do the second y minus the first y. So my second y is -3 minus my first y, 2. Right, then my second x, 4, minus the first x, 2. And then we simplify. So -3 minus 2 is -5, and then 4 minus 2 is 2. If you can simplify, right, but 5 can't be divided by 2, or 2 doesn't go into 5, and then I only have the one negative, so I leave it just like it is. All right, and remember, if it's like a multiple choice problem, the negative can go on top, or on bottom, or out in front, as long as you only have one negative in that answer. Right, for number 2, I'm given a line on a graph, and I want to figure out what the slope is. So I'm given these 2 points here, and I kind of made them darker so that we could see exactly where they were. So what I'm going to do is draw a little triangle here. Okay, here's my rise, and then here's my run. Right, so if I start at this top or bottom point here, and I'm going to go up, it looks like I'm coming from -1 to 0, 1, 2. So that means that I went up 3, right? And then it looks like I'm starting at +3, and I'm going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going all the way to the left to -2. But to go from positive 3 to negative 2, I actually end up subtracting 5 because I'm going from a bigger number to a smaller number. So if I go left, it's really a negative. If I go down, it's a negative. Okay, so I went up, that's a positive 3. Then I went left, so that's a negative 5. So then my rise over run is going to be a positive 3 over a negative 5, right? And that's going to end up being negative 3/5. Another way of looking at it, I could have done this exact same triangle, but on the bottom, right? So if I did it on the bottom, okay, I would be going down 3. So that's where my negative comes in because I'm going down instead of up. But then I would be going to the right. I would be going from negative 2 to positive 3. So I would be getting bigger. So it's going to be a positive 5. And that's going to give me a negative 3 over 5, which is still negative 3/5. Right? So finding the slope, you either got to use a formula or you got to count on the graph. Okay, then graphing. Okay, slope-intercept form is one of the easier forms to graph because it gives you 2 points. In order to graph any line ever, all you need is 2 points because a straight line is straight, right? So if I have 2 points, I have all the points that I need, right? So I need 2 points and it gives me enough information. To start with, it gives me my y-intercept. That's a point on my graph. Specifically, if it's on the y-axis, x is 0, right? Here's my 0, 0, there's my origin. Right? So if I'm on the y-axis, that means that the x value is 0. So my y-intercept is at 0, whatever b is. So it could be 0, 5, 0, negative 3, anything like that, but it's 0, comma b. So to graph these 3, I'm going to start by finding my y-intercept. So for the first one, my y-intercept is negative 2. So that means I have a point at 0, negative 2. So to plot my point, you start at the x value on the x-axis, that's at 0, and then I go down to negative 2. I'm going to put a point. Then I'm going to come to number 2. We're just going to skip around. My y-intercept here is at a positive 4, so that means I'm at 0, 4. So I start at 0 on the x-axis, and I go up 4. Right? And then down here, I don't have anything that I'm adding or subtracting. So that's the same as if I was adding 0. Okay, so then I'm going to have a point at 0, 0, which is right smack dab in the middle. Okay, so I've got my y-intercepts. All I need now is one more point, and we're actually going to use our slope to get that point. Okay, so now I'm going to be giving you the slope, and then you have to do like what we did here, but backwards. I'm going to give you the slope, and you have to figure out the second point by doing rise over run. So we're going to start by making this 3 into a fraction. So my slope is going to be a 3 over 1. Anytime you have a number, you can always put it over 1 because it's the same thing. So then my 3 is my rise, and my 1 is my run. Both of them are positive. So positive 3 means I'm going up. And then a positive 1 means I'm going to the right. So from my point here, I'm going to go up 3. So we got 1, 2, 3. And then I'm going to go over 1. So I went up 3 over 1. There's my 2 points. I can draw a line. All we need is 2. Okay, for this one, right, my slope is a negative 2/3. So you got to pick where you're going to put that negative. I'm going to put it with a 2. So I'm going to rewrite this as a negative 2 over 3. All right, so then from this point, I'm going to go down 2 because it's a negative and right 3. So down 2 and then right 3. Down 2, right 3. There's my second point. I can run my line through it. Remember, if you have a positive slope, you are walking uphill. If you have a negative slope, you are walking downhill. Right? So this first one I had a positive 3, so I'm walking uphill when I go from left to right. You always move left to right. Okay, for the second one, I have a negative slope, and I'm walking downhill when left to right. You always move to the right. All right, and for our last one, looks a little weird because instead of it being a number in front of the x, it's x over 2. Well, this, remember, in front of the x, if there's nothing there, that's really a 1. And just like that other problem we did in one of our other videos, I can rewrite x over 2 as a 1/2 x, right? Because I can either put the x up top or I can put it on the outside of the fraction. Just keep the number in front up top. All right, so now my slope is a 1/2. Okay, a +1 means I'm going to go up. A +2 means I'm going to go to the right. All right, so that means from 0, 0, I'm going to go up 1 and right 2. So up 1, right 2. And then I can draw my line through. Okay? Another type of problem we're going to see is we're going to have to write the equation given the graph. Okay, so we're doing the opposite here. So instead of giving the equation and we graph it, I give you the graph and you have to find the equation. So for this example, let me scooch it. Okay, for this example, I need to figure out what my slope and my y-intercept are so that I can plug it into my mx plus b. Okay, so I'm going to start with the y-intercept because that's very quick, very easy. And my y-intercept is right here. So that y-intercept, my ordered pair, remember y-intercept is always 0, something. And that something is going to be a -1 because that's where I'm at on my y-axis. So my y-intercept is 0, -1. So that means b equals -1. Okay, the next thing I need is my slope. So my slope, we're going to do like what we did up here for this example. And I'm going to figure out the slope using rise over run. Right, so to start with, we'll start with that same y-intercept. You could use any one of these points. And I'm going to go up to this one. So I'm going to draw my little triangle here. Okay, I'm coming from -1 to +1. So that means I'm going up 2. And then I'm going from 0, I'm going from the y-axis, 0, over to +1. So I'm going right 1. So that means that my slope is rise 2 over run 1. And both of them are positive because I went up and right. So my slope is actually 2. Once you have your slope and your y-intercept, you're just going to plug it in, right? My slope-intercept form is mx plus b. I know that my m is 2. And I know that my y-intercept is a -1. So instead of a +1, I'm going to put a -1. And there's the equation. Okay, one more thing we got to look at before we get down to the next form. There are 2 special kinds of slopes. Okay, let's see, we're going to add it right here. All right, they're the ones where if you're not walking uphill or downhill, we're not doing either one. So it's not going to be a positive or a negative slope. So if I'm not walking uphill or downhill, that means I'm walking flat. Okay, if I'm walking flat, this is a horizontal line. Okay, and my slope, because I'm not going up or down, it's just going to be 0. So for every horizontal line, your slope is 0. Now, if I give you an equation, right, and you got to figure out what the slope is, a horizontal line is going to look a little different. It's not going to have an x and a y in it. It's only going to have a y. So that means a horizontal line is going to be y equals a number. So y equals 2, y equals 5, y equals 10. So your horizontal line is y equals. The other special kind of line is like horizontal, but we're going to go up and down, and that's our vertical line. Okay, a vertical line, that's like a wall. You can't walk up a wall, right? So because I can't even do it, it's not going to have a slope. It's going to be what we call undefined. No slope. Okay, and then my equation is like the opposite of the horizontal. Instead of a y, it's going to be x equals a number. So it might be x equals 1, and y equals 7, x equals 3, y equals 12. Those are all of your horizontal and vertical lines. So you got to pay attention. If I give you y equals a number, you automatically know your slope is 0. If I give you x equals a number, you automatically know your slope is undefined. Okay, other than that, it's just a matter if it's a horizontal line, you're going to go to wherever that number is and draw a horizontal line. If it is a vertical, you're going to go to wherever that number is and you're going to draw a vertical line. Okay? All right, standard form. Oops, wrong way. Standard form is this ax plus by equals c. Okay, so you have x and y on the same side. Technically in standard form, a must be a positive number, right? And then it's going to be equal to your constant. So it looks a little different. right? I'm not so worried about you knowing standard form as much as practicing going from standard form to slope-intercept form. So to switch to slope-intercept form from this, we're going to solve for y. Okay, that means that we're going to get this guy by itself. And it's going to look a little different than just solving equations because I have more than one variable in here. We have an x and a y. So we're going to practice. So for the first one, okay, all I want to do for these two is switch to slope-intercept form. So that means I want to get this y by itself, right? Just like with solving equations, we're going to start farthest away from the y on that side, which is going to be the x. So this is a positive x. I want to move this x to the other side. So I'm going to move it by subtracting it. Okay, so I'm left with a negative 2y equals a 4 minus x. Okay, then to get the y by itself, I have to get rid of the negative 2. So I'm going to divide by negative 2. Okay, now I need to simplify this a little bit so it looks more like the mx plus b, right? Because technically y is by itself, but we're going to make it pretty. Whenever you take something and divide it by a number, I can break it apart by dividing both of those by that number. All right, so I'm going to say y equals 4 divided by negative 2 is negative 2. Negative 1x divided by negative 2 is a positive 1/2 x. Okay, 1 divided by 2. And then I could stop here, or if I want it to look like the mx plus b, I can switch these guys around and put my x first. So then I'm going to end up having a positive 1/2 x and then my negative 2. So there's my slope-intercept form. So you got to solve for y, but remember, I can't combine the 4 and the x here when I go to subtract because they're not like terms, so I just have to rewrite them on the same side. Okay, and then number 2, same thing. So I want to get y by itself, so I'm going to start by getting rid of my 3x. So it's a positive 3x, so I'm going to subtract 3x from both sides. And I don't have to break the x apart. I don't care about getting the x by itself. I care only about getting the y by itself. So then we have 5y equals 5 minus 3x. Right? And again, I can't combine those, so we're just going to leave it. All right, and then I want to get rid of the 5. So I'm going to divide by 5. Now another way of looking at it, instead of putting all of it over 5, I can go ahead and just put everything divided by 5. Same exact thing. All right, so I got y equals 5 divided by 5 is 1. 3 divided by 5 I can't do, so I'm just going to leave that as 3/5 times x. And again, if I wanted to switch them and put them in a nicer looking slope-intercept form, I can put that negative 3/5, that negative stays with it, out front. And then I have a positive 1. So negative 3/5 x plus 1. All right, one more. I'm going to graph, but I'm given the equation in standard form. If I want to graph right now and I'm given standard form, we're just going to switch it to slope-intercept form and then graph like we did earlier in the video. So to start with, I got to switch. So I'm going to start by getting y by itself and subtract the 2x from both sides. So I get 3y equals 6 minus 2x. And if you wanted to, you can go ahead and switch these now. You don't have to wait until the end. So I can go ahead and switch these and say 3y equals negative 2x plus 6. Same thing. But I still got to get y by itself. So I still have to divide everything by 3. Okay, I can't do 2 divided by 3. I'm going to come over here. So I'm going to leave that as a negative 2/3 x. But I can do 6 divided by 3, which is 2. So now it's in slope-intercept form, so I can find my slope and my intercept and graph. So I'm going to start with the intercept, which is a 2. So that means my y-intercept is at 0, 2. So I'm going to go to 0, 2, and put a point. And then my slope is a negative 2/3. So again, you pick a top or a bottom to put your negative. I'm going to put the top. Doesn't matter. So that means my rise is a negative 2. So I'm going to go down 2. My run is a positive 3. So that means I'm going to go right 3. So from my y-intercept, I'm going to go down 2, and that puts me on the x-axis, and then right 3. Put a point and connect it. And there's my line. All right, so slope-intercept form, use your y-intercept and your slope. If it's given to you in standard form or any other form really, just get y by itself so that you're in slope-intercept form, and then you can graph it.